Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for the return, guys, of the Elite 11 Team Reveal series. Super excited to say we've got Andrew back on the channel. He has had a massive resurgence since I stopped talking to him, so maybe there's something in that. But guys, we're going to get his thoughts ahead of Game Week 23, ahead of double Game Week 24. We've got a really interesting topic for you in terms of Liverpool assets. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Channel and super excited to see this upswing in terms of the chart on the right hand side. You can see a little red arrow since last week, but still it's been a great Christmas period for you, mate. So talk to me around how it's gone for you the last few weeks.
Yeah, little red arrows. It's just standard for when we come chat to you, Tom. No, it's been a good December, to be fair. I think it's just two reds in the last 8 or 9 game weeks or so.
Okay.
So December's written really well for me and obviously trending in the right direction. So
Definitely.
quite happy.
Yeah, I'm sure. And like it's been several game weeks, guys. We did take the sort of few weeks off there over the festive period. So I hope everyone has had similar green arrow trending for yourselves, for all the viewers watching on today. Is there anything you did differently, Andrew? Did you just catch sort of lightning in a bottle? Was it a change in tactic? Who are your heroes over the festive period? Who's kind of worked out for you?
It's a good question, actually. Nothing really that spectacular. I think one
No
of the last
injuries,
things we
maybe.
said
Maybe
last
no
time we
injuries.
chat. Yeah, true. No injuries helps for me. Yeah. No, the last time we chatted, funnily enough, I think the last thing I mentioned was just going with, I'd started that uptick. I'd had 2 or 3 sort of weeks where I was finally getting some green arrows in a row. And I think I mentioned it was just a case of going with, the obvious as opposed to doing anything spectacular and
Sure.
getting players in that no one else had. So no, just the Isaks and catching some points from Ahmad and getting on Gordon really early, getting on Hall really early. So
Beautiful.
I can thank Newcastle quite a bit for that.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a look at your Game Week 22 points in just a moment, Andrew. But ahead of the Game Week 23 reveal, I should say, guys, today's Game Week 23 fixture, home to Ipswich, and then of course that beautiful double game week why we play the game in Game Week 24. So that's what we've got for you guys. We're going to take a look at some stats as well. And Andrew, just before we get on to look at Game Week 22 points, how many transfers have you accrued leading into 23? Have you got more than one free available? What's the situation for you right now?
I've got 2 frees at the
Beautiful.
moment. Yeah,
Okay.
I think with the blank game week coming up in 29, I'd like to go into that with as many transfers as possible. Because at the moment, still obviously weighing up whether the free hit works on that one or not. And I'd like the option of not playing the free hits. I've just got flashbacks to 29 last season playing the free hit there and average of like 12 points for that week. So God, if I can avoid that again.
No kidding. And it didn't take long to sour the mood, did it, with that particular memory? God, I think we've all tried to write that one out. But there you go. Let's see whether or not we can correct it this season. All right, mate. Look, well done on a great upswing in fortune, sitting around about 314k right now. Just before we move on, Andrew, very quickly, what's the target for the end of the season? Around about 314k right now. Chips in hand, double game weeks to come. What are we shooting for the moon? What's the target?
Yeah, still 10K. It's always at 10K. Obviously, I'm keen on that 8th one. I need an average of about 20,000 overall per week until the end of the season to get that. So not, out of the realms of possibility. I think the next sort of setting myself from going up into sort of game week 29, 30, I think I need to be in and around that 100K mark by then.
Yeah.
So I think giving myself another 7 game weeks or so to get another 200,000 spots or so. Because I think if I'm in and around the 100,000 mark by game week 30, I go into game week 30 with a wild card, with a bench boost, a free hit, the Arse Man chip, and anything can happen in those last 8 game weeks.
Damn right. Looking forward to it. All right, man. Well, I'm not going to bet against you, particularly with this trending in the right direction. Although maybe appearing on these videos might provide an antidote to those plans. We shall see, mate. But let's look back at Game Week 22 and see how you got on. Okay, mate. So we can see it wasn't the best game week here. Let's talk around the defence to start with, Andrew. And I'm going to start actually with the goalkeeper as well. So Bob Sanchez, the Chelsea defence. Sorry to sour the mood even further, but what's the plan with him, man?
Terrible. Yeah, terrible. I mean, and spoiler alert, he's probably the one that moves on for me this week. Yeah, so owning Sanchez has been awful. That Chelsea defense is just so bad, and it's so much worse when you're watching a team that you need a clean sheet from, and it's literally the person that you own that keeps making the mistakes to concede goals.
Yeah.
It's it's so frustrating, and
Mm-hmm.
I cannot wait to get rid of him. He was never someone I really wanted to get in.
Yeah.
He was what I felt was the best of a bad bunch at the 4.5 million mark. I didn't want to spend more than that. And this is when I had Haaland in the side. So I was just trying to skimp on that money and trying to get everything I could out of, the rest of the team. So the only reason why I had him, he's not very good.
No.
Just as a player. I'd be quite surprised if he's still first choice by the end of the season,
or even by the end of the window, right? I mean, the transfer window's still open. They're in a good position. You would do wonder whether or not there might be something around this, because he's been disappointing, hasn't he? And he certainly doesn't strike myself as a potentially league-winning goalkeeper anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I own him, and there's been 2 game weeks, I think, in the time that I've owned him where he's actually been benched, for rotation. He's just like, dear God, if I've got a keeper that's being benched for rotation, it's, that's sort of alarm bells. I should be probably trying to move him on. And it kind of makes the decision a little bit easier for me this week, just in terms of where I might want to go on the triple up.
Sure.
I haven't made the transfer yet. I'm still weighing up those options. I usually, always look to try and capitalize on the attack. So yeah, it'll be kind of going through this chat with you and hopefully having a little bit more of a clear idea of where I might want to go afterwards.
Sure, man. Definitely. We'll get you there for sure. I want to talk to you around, you're a Man United fan, right, Andrew? You've got 2 Man United players here. Didn't do too badly in terms of the returns, right? And but it's unreal what's happening at the club, right? And I mean, I'm in the same position for what it's worth with the same 2, with Ahmad, who's been great and it's great value, and Bruno Fernandes, who has been an FPL stalwart over many years. But what on earth's going on, man? Can we trust this team at all right now, Man United, bearing in mind Ruben Amorim's comments and the recent run of performances in the league?
You can't trust the team at all, unfortunately. I think the thing that does work for us as FPL managers is that it's not a team game, not when you're playing the arsemanship, at least.
Good point.
It's an individual's game. And I think I saw something on Twitter this week. I can't remember what it was exactly. It was a good sort of 16 out of the last 18 goals had involvements from either Ahmad or Fernandes. So
Lovely.
If you are sitting there on the weekend and you get a notification through on the phone, United have scored, you look at it. I mean, before you kind of that notification, you go in and have a look at who it was that's scored or assisted. You can be pretty damn sure either one of those 2 is involved, which is why I'm quite happy to have both. Bruno, if I could go back, I got him into 2 game weeks ago, and it was a kind of a toss-up between himself and Eze. And, Eze's ticked along quite nicely, but there is obviously that chance of Eze missing out in game week 29, given that Newcastle are 2 up after the first leg in that semi-final. So it looks like Crystal Palace might lose out on that game in 29. So that's kind of why I ended up going with Bruno Fernandes. So almost reluctantly, but quite happy having him there. If United score, there's a good chance he's involved in it.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And I mean, we're recording midweek, so United haven't actually played their game against Rangers yet. But it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is from that team, from the really public dressing down that the manager gave them. And if they rally, then you would be more encouraged and more bullish ahead of their upcoming fixtures as well. I'm just looking at this bench, Andrew, that you've got here. You've got some great options. You and I have talked and waxed lyrical about Robinson all season, right? What's he got to do to get a starting berth in this team, man? Come on, he's been amazing. He should be in this team every week, should he not?
Yeah, I've been cursing Gabriel the last few weeks. When you've got Gabriel and Trent in your defense, you feel like you need to play them. They're obviously 2 of of the best defensive sides in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that only means that there's one spot open
Sure.
between, Robinson and Hall. Can't say every now and then, unfortunately, Aston Villa can't keep a clean sheet. But yeah, it's a strong bench. Not this last week, the week before, game week 21. All three of my outfield players returned, and I have benched returns in 5 of the last 6 game weeks, unfortunately. So I've left a lot of points on the bench, but I guess, I don't mind it. It's the sort of thing that happens with a good squad, and I'd rather have that good squad. It also means that those players are popular. People are wanting to go to them, and I've already got them.
Yeah, man.
So, the options are there. It's just a case of trying to make sure that you're getting the right. And I've got another. We'll have a look at my team a bit later, but I've got another hard decision to make this week.
Yeah, and I guess benching those points, that's going to be the downside. But you won't have a luck into points if you don't have them on the bench, right? So having that strong squad is testament to a strong FPL return, I would have thought as well. Andrew, I'm not going to belabor this because I'm going to save it back for the Game Week 23 reveal, which will be upcoming. So let's move it on. Let's take a little look at how the stats are shaping up, looking at the last 4 game weeks, which will then lead nicely into this week's hot topic. This is the last 4 game weeks, and we're looking at stats per 90 minutes, with players having to have played at least 180 minutes in that period. So, Andrew, you and I were talking before recording, and look at this: Mo Salah is appearing in all 5 of the individual metrics, and Liverpool are top of the expected goals conceded, with the only team under a goal a game. So they're top of the Premier League. They're smashing it defensively. They've got an absolute FPL darling in Mo Salah as well. And we're going to come on and talk about them in a minute, but is there anything else that's leaping out to you from these stats over the last 4 game weeks that you wanted to talk around? Particularly, I'm thinking around a certain striker at the other end of the table.
Two strikers that actually kind of pop out to me there. Visser, I'm really glad to see in there. Obviously, top of the expected goals there. He's in there with the shots in the box, obviously, too, and just shots in general. So I thought about getting rid of him a couple of game weeks ago. Then it was actually for Mateta, and obviously a little bit annoyed that I didn't go for Mateta because he's done really well over the last few game weeks. But again, it's just that blank in 29, and I quite like the idea of having Visser again when their fixtures turn. And that's literally in the next sort of game week or two that, people are going to be wanting to get back onto this. And I've had this for a long time now, so I have a little bit of money in him too. So quite happy to see his name up there. The other one that's jumped up is Calvert-Lewin. I can't believe he's in there for expected goals. I assume it's just because of the amount of shots that he's getting off in the box.
Yeah, the David Moyes effect as well, right? He says with bitter irony, having watched Moyes preside over West Ham for a few years. But yeah, I guess it's exciting, right? They've got an upcoming double as well. Any interest at all in or would you put your name to recommending Dominic Calvert-Lewin to FPL managers?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's hard to recommend Calvert-Lewin just because of the drought he's gone through in terms of goals. But I will definitely be considering it. I have Raul in my side. Fulham fixtures, they turn a little bit, and he was always a stopgap. I got Raul in for about a sort of a 5 game week sort of run where Fulham had some really good fixtures, and he's done fairly well for me. Obviously, that one game with the 2 penalties coming through really nicely for me there. But I will be looking to move him on shortly, and Calvert-Lewin is slightly cheaper. I think I save about 0.2 going from Raul to Calvert-Lewin. And obviously, with the wild card in mind, game week 30 or so, he's not going to be in there for too long. And with a strong squad, I won't need to rely on a Calvert-Lewin much just because of the other attacking players I've got and the good fixtures that they have too. So that is the only reason I am kind of considering him, is playing him in that double in 24 and then kind of benching him for the rest for those next 4 or 5 game weeks. So it's hard to recommend him knowing that I'm just going to bench him. but I may be looking at bringing him in possibly. We'll see how many drinks I have before Gameweek 24.
Yeah, fair point. And I mean, look, you've hedged it perfectly sufficiently, I think, there in terms of what it would mean. And hey, look, it would mean that Anthony Robinson gets more likelihood of getting into your team if you bring him in as a known bench option. So that should count for something as well, because we love that guy. What about the other Everton attacker? He doesn't feature on here, but you and I again were talking off camera. I'm not even sure of the pronunciation. I'm going to call him Ndai, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. Do you think if given the choice of the two, they're the same price at time of recording, 5.4 million? Is it straight up DCL is the option to go for with penalties and these stats backing him, Andrew, and that's the way to go?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're asking me personally, it is Calvert-Lewin just simply because of that. I think the penalties just sway it. And obviously the fact that you can see the number of shots he's getting in the box there, being in the top 5, being in the top 3 over the last 4 game weeks. Still can't believe that. But yeah, I think that just sways it for me. I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at Ndai, so I haven't really seen any heat.
There's a reason for that.
Like that suggesting. But yeah, I obviously just haven't really been looking at that Everton attack at all.
No, fair enough, mate. Let's not belabor that too much on the Everton attackers. We're here to talk FPL managers already, but the Liverpool defence, they're really tightening up. And it leads us really nicely on to a hot topic that Andrew's helped us prepared, looking at what the best Liverpool contingent of players you can come up with ahead of Game Week 3 and ahead of the Game Week 24 double could be. So let's take a look. Okay, guys, so we've extracted some of the more likely targets, I guess, from the Liverpool squad here that people may be interested in ahead of Game Week 23, ahead of the game against Ipswich, who just got thoroughly dispatched by a resurgent Man City, and of course the double game week in 24. We don't need to include Mo Salah. We just waxed lyrical about him, didn't we? So this is more around the defensive contingent there on the left-hander, and then looking at some more attacking options there. But give me your thoughts, man. Who's leaping out at you from here? If you had a blank slate and you had 2 picks to supplement Mo Salah with, what would you be recommending looking at these stats?
Well, I think it's Trent probably first and foremost. If you do have a blank slate, if you've only got one Liverpool player at the moment in Salah, I think Trent needs to be the next one that you're having a look at. I think it's just because of the upside there. You can obviously have a look at the expected FPL points there per game. He's obviously the highest out of all of them there, out of all the options, and he is a defender. So, he comes with both the attacking and the defensive threat. And we saw on the last slide there that, Liverpool over the last 4 have been the best defense in the league. So there is that slight uptick now. You've got Konate back in. Konate has played in the last 3. Funnily enough, Liverpool they've actually haven't quite got the points that they should have in terms of expected points over the last 4 to 6 game weeks from a defensive point of view. They obviously had that game against United conceding 2, and then conceding against, it was Forest week before last, wasn't
That's
it?
Right.
Just conceding ones that you wouldn't really expect them to do so. So I would think there'd be a sort of return to the norm. So I'm actually quite bullish on the Liverpool defense going forward, especially over the next 3 game weeks. You've got a double game week. There are 2 away games, but you've got 2 home games flanking that, one against Ipswich and the other against Wolves. So, I'd expect at least 2 clean sheets out of those 4 game weeks, I think. So, yeah, quite like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So if we're saying that Trent Alexander-Arnold justifies the price at 7.2 million at time of recording, I guess it comes down to your preference between solving the Sanchez-shaped problem with Alisson, right? Or do we look to historic double game week successes of Virgil van Dijk? I mean, do you have a preference either way, Andrew? Is it your team specific would lend itself more to the former? What's your read?
Yeah, my team lends itself to Becker just simply because there was also obviously that worry about Liverpool having a blank in game week 29, and it's just a lot easier to be able to put a goalkeeper on the bench for that particular game week. You don't need to worry about that extra player, having a blank and not being in your 11 and having to use transfers and possibly getting him out again if you want to bench the likes of uh, Eastack, Salah, Hall, Gordon, if you want to hold into him, that sort of thing. So Becker just makes a lot more sense for me personally. I think a lot of teams will find it quite difficult getting in Trent and Virgil just from a team setup point of view. I think a lot of people have obviously got in very good defensive options at the moment. I mean, we obviously went through them earlier, having a look at the defenders I've got to put on the bench every week, and Robinson and Hall and the likes. So I think it'll be very, very difficult. I obviously sort of had a look at, does Konaté make sense? But with Gabriel, with Trent, with Hall, with Robinson, getting in another one of those defenders doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for me. And I would think it would be very similar for a lot of managers out there, to be honest. So, yeah, Becker just makes a lot more sense from a defensive point of view for my side at least.
Yeah, I definitely concur, and it does say, you mentioning that they've been a bit shortchanged in terms of the defensive points relative to their performance. I can definitely testify to that, being an owner of two Liverpool defensive assets. So hopefully we get that return over the next few game weeks. If you were making an endorsement towards the attacking side of the fence, I guess, Andrew, in terms of Louis Diaz, Gakpo, Sabol, a preference here? Do you see there being a potential big upside with any one of them? Would Darwin Núñez even come into the thinking with his recent brace? I mean, let's say if it's circumstantial and you're chasing from a long way back, is there a punt that you'd be recommending?
You're taking a big risk getting Núñez in. Yeah, there's just no knowing how many minutes he's going to be getting. So,
Yeah,
for a manager like me who prefers to kind of, get players in who you can be
sure.
pretty sure are going to get that start on enough minutes, I wouldn't be going there myself
No.
personally. I think it's either a Diaz or Gakpo, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking at those two. And out of those two, I think it's Gakpo at the moment who seems to be a bit more secure in terms of the sort of expected minutes, and Diaz is kind of he's getting hooked quite early at the moment too. There's a lot of that sort of 60-minute or so,
Yeah.
getting subbed off. So yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous. Gakpo, yeah, great option. There will be I'm not really set up to go there myself for the double game week.
No.
And I do usually, in a double game week, I prefer to attack the points with attackers as opposed to defenders. There's obviously just more of an upside. So you would expect to probably get more from an attacker than you would for a defender. There is a chance of more points there, but it just doesn't make sense for the team setup that I've got at the moment. He would
No.
come in for a few game weeks, and then I'd have to use a transfer again to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
There is also, the fact that they are both away games in that double game week in 24. Gakpo, he hasn't been nearly as good away from home as he has been at home. Now, obviously, that's not an indication of the fact that he can't score well away from home, but they are two relatively good defenses away from home. I was having a look at the Fantasy Football Fix website. They've sort of got the comparisons and the projections and stats on the website there, and having a look at the difference between home and away for Gakpo and trying to make that decision. And his points per game at home is 5.1 this season. Away from home is just 1.8.
Gosh,
12
wow.
bonus points at
Huge drop.
home and
Huge drop off.
0 bonus points away from home. So it is quite a worry. I think the assist potential is better away from home. So I just wonder whether away from home he just has slightly different instructions. He's
Yeah.
kind of playing a little bit more of the provider away from home. But having said that, only 2 assists, I think, this whole season.
Yeah.
So, it puts me off enough to make my decision in going for a double defense with Liverpool, satisfactory for me, I think. Having said that, though, like I mentioned, that those 2 away games are flanked by really 2 good home games where Gakpo has been really decent this season. So I think 5 of his 6 goals this season have come at home. And when he's got Ipswich in 23 and Wolves at home in 25, I think that's where you kind of need to take advantage of Gakpo. So if you are thinking about going there, I would say do it for that 3-game week period, those 4 games, so that you're getting those 2 home games on either side, just to take advantage of those home games as well as the double game week in 24.
Awesome. Love it. Really concise and makes complete sense in terms of, it's fascinating to know the drop off between home and away. That is a huge, huge drop. But like you say, the bookending of the fixtures home either side of the double game week would suggest, if you're going to do it, guys, get on that move in time for game week 23 and not leaving it for the double. That's been really, really interesting, Andrew. So, and I think just before we wrap up on this as well, the Alisson, I mean, I don't want to jinx it with your record with injuries as well, but it does feel like Alisson's risk of rotation is obviously far less than Gakpo. We've got 3 attackers on here, but there are others to choose from. We mentioned Darwin Núñez. I'm not sure of the status of Diego Jota, for example, but there are options there, aren't they, in terms of the midfield and attack, in terms of rotating over those condensed fixtures, and hopefully that doesn't extend to Mr. Becker as well. So we shall see. Lovely thoughts, Andrew. That's been enlightening for myself and hopefully for all of the viewers as well. And that leads us nicely on to finally take a look at your Game Week 23 team. Okay, guys, so you'll see a lot of familiarity here, but we do have 2 free transfers as well, Andrew. So I'm going to cut straight to the chase, mate. You've got 1.1 million in the bank. You're talking about the want to, accrue transfers ahead of blank game week 29. But what are we going to do, mate? We're going to use 1, we're going to use 2, we're going to take a hit.
Just the 1 transfer for me this week, I think, and I'm pretty certain it's going to be that Sanchez to Alisson move. It means that I go into game week 24 with 2 transfers, where I highly doubt I'll use those 2 transfers. It feels a little bit weird not using all your transfers and taking advantage of a double game week, but I'll already have triple Liverpool, and it's just a case of whether there's a Everton player that I want to bring in. And when I say a Everton player, I mean Dominic Calvert-Lewin, basically. Obviously, I'm going to have Alisson in the side, so I won't be looking at getting a Pickford in, for example. I'm sure he'll be a popular option for the double game week if you don't have Alisson. And I'm not really interested in getting Mikalenko in unless I get him in for concert, just simply because of the other, defenders that I've got there who rotate really well and already give me benching headaches. So I think it's just a case of, in 24, do I decide to move Raul on for Dominic Calvert-Lewin? And like I said, just pretty much bench him until I use that wild card, likely in game week 30, 31, I think.
Andrew, I've got to say, the Man United, fan in you, you're playing 2 Man United attackers away at Fulham here. Is that definitely going to be the case? Are you not going to find a place for Conser playing my guys, or even the boy Robinson we've been mentioning? Do they justify their inclusion?
No, it would be, if one of them doesn't play, it would actually probably be the striker that plays against them that comes in, Raul at home. I'm always going to favour the attackers. I don't like playing 4 at the back, even if they are great options. I think with Robinson at home to Man United, yes, obviously there is that, possibility of a clean sheet. There's possibilities of phantom assists for him there too. But I just, I just prefer going with the attacking options. Just obviously more routes to points there, usually. So again, like I said, there's a bit of a benching headache for me, because there are options, and all 3 of those outfield players that are on the bench for me this week can come in for one, and it would probably be Ahmad that I end up putting on the bench for one of them. So definitely not locked in there at the moment. Even Vista away from home against Crystal Palace is quite a tough call, because Crystal Palace has been pretty decent in terms of their defense at home in the last few. So I think there's been a few clean sheets for them recently. So yeah, I've got a decision to make. They're certainly not locked in. At the moment, it's just like that. But yeah, any one of those three could come in.
Nice problems to have, man.
Most likely Raul.
Yeah, nice problems to have. And you say more routes to points. I would remind you that against Brighton, I think the one shot on target they had was from the penalty spot. So, just throwing that out there in terms of just confusing the matter a little bit. But look at that squad. I mean, whoever you pick, it's going to be a strong team going into to game week 23, and a nice bench to pick up any jammy bench points anyway. Andrew, it's been awesome. Yeah. So great to catch up, mate. I'm so glad that you're kicking on and now pushing on and looking to break into the top 250k before too long, I'm sure. Anything you want to cover that we haven't already spoken about, mate, before we wrap things up?
No, not really. We obviously haven't chatted too much about the trips strategy side, but I think just the one piece of advice I would give now is just, if you do have the opportunity to roll that transfer, do it. I think with the Arseman chip, I'm not looking at using that in 24. I think the triple captaincy, I've still got that one, and it's likely to go on Salah in 24. I'm going to be hanging on to that assistant manager chip until the back end of the season. And I think the managers who have the most flexibility will be the ones that gain the most from that particular chip. I know a lot of people are just looking at, not using transfers on a manager for that particular one, but we know how quickly things change in the Premier League, how quickly that table can change. You may find opportunities. You may go with an easy option like a Slot or whoever it may be as a manager for that assistant manager chip, and decide that you're going to have them in for 3 game weeks because that makes the most sense. I think it's going to be really good to have that flexibility, have a few transfers up the sleeve to be able to go, you know what, Fulham have looked brilliant this week. I think I might want to take advantage of the fact that, they're playing Liverpool at home, whatever it may be. I think as flexible as you can be, save the transfers up.
Yeah, it's great advice to end the video on. Although I should say, as ever, I like being a little bit renegade, and I'm actually tempted to use the triple captain this week in game week 23 ahead of 24. So stay tuned. I'll let you know if I have the guts to do it in next week's video. Guys, it's been great. Apologies if there were any tech issues. We were battling with a few gremlins before. Some resizing as we've gone, but hopefully it's all been fine. Andrew, thanks so much for joining, mate. We'll get you back on in due course. Guys, do please smash a like on the video. On your way out, do please leave a comment down below. Do head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and subscribe to get your push notifications for Andrew and all of our other elite managers as they form their teams ahead of game week 23 and into the double game week season. Guys, it's been a pleasure to get back with you, and I'll be back with you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.